My mom cut me off for being homophobic and disruptive in my brother's wedding, and I'm glad she did it. Last week, my older brother Rick and one of my best friends, Hannah, got married. I was the maid of honor since I knew both the bride and groom, and I was the one who introduced them. Besides taking care of the bride, I also helped her invite Rick's and my side of the family, as she only knew our immediate family and a couple of cousins. So, I made sure to invite all of our relatives, which amounted to around 30 people, and reminded them to RSVP. Because of this, I knew who was coming and who wasn't. As the ceremony was about to start, all of my relatives had arrived except for one person, my other older brother and the middle child, Jeremy. I called Jeremy multiple times, but he didn't answer. I informed Rick and my parents about the situation. Rick assured me it was fine and that we could continue with the plan. However, my mom seemed oddly excited and cryptically told me to wait for it. Despite all of that, we proceeded with the plan, and the ceremony ran smoothly. The reception followed, and that's when Jenny, formerly known as Jeremy, unexpectedly burst into the wedding with a broad smile and highly inappropriate wedding attire. Jenny wore a beige-colored modified wedding dress with a sheer top, revealing their torso. The dress is a puffy princess gown, featuring a long, torn-looking train with bright purple and black paint splatters. To top it off, they had applied elaborate makeup. I was initially shocked and then horrified by their appearance. Although they technically didn't do anything yet, the attention shifted from the wedding to them. Mom stood up from her seat, embraced Jenny, and loudly expressed how proud she was. Despite Jenny's attempts to gracefully lead Mom back to the table, the damage was done. I exchanged a worried glance with Hannah, who seemed on the brink of tears. I decided to address the issue and pulled Jenny aside for a confrontation. We argued about their inappropriate behavior, while they defended it as a form of self-expression. Mid-argument, one of the groomsmen, also Hannah's older brother, intervened with security personnel and instructed Jenny to change into more suitable attire or leave immediately. Jenny protested, calling us homophobic and other nasty names. The security team escorted them out, and I returned to my table. Mom noticed my return and asked me about Jenny. I explained that Jenny had been asked to leave due to their refusal to change into appropriate clothing. In response, my mom hurled hurtful words at me, labeling me as a homophobic bitch and saying "you are dead" to me before leaving. She later returned with Jenny wearing the more simple dress about an hour later. Now, let me explain why I'm relieved that she cut ties with me. I've been raised in a conservative, traditional, Christian family. My parents, especially my mom, are very sensitive to changes and new ideas. Jenny has always been the golden child. They were born premature and weren't breathing. They had to be resuscitated and kept at the hospital for months. Jenny is frail, and my mom always said that the fact that they are still alive is a miracle. Mom always pays attention to Jenny because of their poor health. Jenny became accustomed to the constant attention and disliked being out of it. When I was born, Jenny threw tantrums daily and even exhibited dangerous behaviors, throwing hard toys at me. This prompted my parents to entrust my care to my grandparents for my safety. The deal was my aunt would take care of Rick and Jenny on the weekends, and my parents would stay with my grandparents to take care of me. The idea is so that I still have an attachment to my parents. It worked for 3 weeks, then Jenny started throwing more tantrums because Mom is not home and hurting my aunts by biting or pulling her hair. Furthermore, Jenny got a high fever because of too much crying and refusal to eat without Mom, so, after only a month, my mom gave up the idea and stopped visiting me. My dad stuck to the plan and brought Rick with him most of the time. By the way, this is also why my mom had her tubes tied, although it is against her beliefs. I returned to our home when I was 5. At that point, I didn't have any relationship with Mom and Jenny, but we managed. Jenny is very close with Mom, and Mom always took their side. They would snitch to Mom when Rick and I did something bad or blame us for something they did. Rick moved out at 18 because of this. Rick and Jenny shared a room when Rick was a high schooler and Jenny was in middle school. Rick had a secret girlfriend, and Jenny found out because they went through Rick's backpack and found a love letter given by the girlfriend. Mom always told us to not date, so when Jenny tattled to her, she was pissed. Mom forced Rick to break up with his then girlfriend, which he reluctantly does so. The next year, Jenny becomes a freshman in the same high school where Rick is a senior. Jenny immediately got a girlfriend. Mom was excited about it, telling Jenny to bring her often. Every time Jenny's girlfriend came to visit, Rick would come to my room because Jenny would tell him off. One day, Mom was cleaning Rick's and Jenny's room and found a ripped rubber wrapper. Although it is obvious who uses it, Mom immediately blames Rick, even though Rick doesn't have a girlfriend nor brings a girl home. He was grounded for the rest of his senior year and barred from going to prom. Their relationship was hostile from then on out until he moved out after graduation. When I was 15, I realized that I am a lesbian. Due to my family upbringing, I kept it a secret and only told Rick. Unfortunately, Jenny discovered this somehow and threatened to reveal it to Mom unless I became their personal servant. I agreed. I would do everything for them, their homework and projects, clean after them when Mom was not home, give them part of my allowance, etc. But, when Dad went on a business trip for 2 months and was not home to defend me, Jenny told Mom, and Mom kicked me to the curb, saying I needed to pray to God and clean my sinful thinking. I called Rick and he picked me up, allowing me to stay with him. When my dad went home, he was furious at Mom and demanded she apologize to me. Mom refuses, but Dad threatens he will divorce her if she does not yield. In the end, she comes to Rick's apartment, begging me to come home. Things seemed to go back to normal, but when we fought, sometimes Mom would bring this up and state my shameful way of living almost cost her marriage. I moved out as soon as I could support myself financially. Anyway, I wanted to cut her off, but I love my dad and want to visit him as much as I can. Furthermore, I don't want to be seen as the ungrateful daughter by other relatives, so I kept the relationship with minimal contact. However, now that she cuts me off first, I don't have to deal with that witch anymore. It's ironic she labeled me as homophobic despite her own rejection of me when discovering my sexuality. I'm more than happy to be free from her toxicity. I'm abandoning my children. I am a 38-year-old woman. I have 9 kids. To start off my story, I guess, I was straight out of college, 22 years old, when I met my now husband, who was 28. He had money, bought me nice things, treated me like a queen, so it was only expected when we got married the same year. When I was 23, we had our first kid, Kaylee. My life was perfect back then. I was happy to have my daughter, so when my husband wanted a second child, I was okay with it. His family loved kids. His family was huge. Everyone had at least 5 kids, and I was okay with giving him kids. Eventually he wanted a third child, which once again I was fine with. To give you all of my kids' ages, here you are. Kaylee, 15, Aaron, 13, Noah, 12, Natalie, 10, Paul, 6, Mari, 4, Kelly and Joe, both 2, and Brianna, 5 months. My first 4 kids were okay, stressful enough to always have my hands busy, but it was okay. Between my 4th and 5th kid I got really sick, and only then did I realize how much I really had to do. I was in and out of the hospital, and my kids had to be in daycare. My husband was too busy to deal with them, and once I was finally healthy I held off on having more kids. 2 years after my illness, I fell pregnant, this one accidental. My husband and his family were elated. So happy, another blessing, but it was different for me this time. I didn't love my new son. I felt nothing for him. Not hate, not love, pure indifference. He felt like a chore, like something I just had to deal with. I was constantly doing things, running around, cleaning, all that. It got easier the next year when all of my other kids were in school. But my husband wanted another kid, and we argued, again and again and again. I didn't want any more, but he did. So I gave in, gave him another. I was a shell of a person, just a mother, that's it. My then 2 youngest, I basically did the least I could do. I would never neglect my children, but I didn't do anything that I didn't have to. When I had the twins, it was like my life was falling apart. I cried hard. I didn't want any more kids. I was already so stressed. But I did. My most recent pregnancy with Brianna I just broke. I was done from the second she was born, worn out, finished. I had no love in my heart left to give. I was bitter, upset with my husband for making me do this, upset with my kids causing me all this stress, upset with the world. I recently found a job. Using my degree, I got a job that pays roughly $45,000 a year, out of state, through a friend. I'm planning on divorcing my husband, and giving up custody of my last 5 kids. They don't deserve to have a mother who doesn't love them, and I don't deserve to have to deal with them. I feel sorry for myself, and sorry for them. Especially Paul, seeing as he's already had enough memories of me to miss me. But I don't love him, I won't miss him. I found a 4-bedroom apartment that me and my kids can move into. It'll be tough, I know that, and they probably won't ever forgive me, but I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. I know my husband won't fight for custody with the kids I will take, and he'll probably beg me to take the others. My husband loves not being a father, even though he has so many kids. I don't care. I know. My other 5 kids will have a horrible upbringing, and I caused it. I know. But I don't deserve this. I was an idiot. I shouldn't have let myself have more kids. I should have divorced my husband sooner. No, I just shouldn't have married him.
My guidance counselor told me I wasn't university material, and years later I pretended not to know her. Back in high school, I struggled hard. I had a stepdad who adopted me and then ignored me my whole life, and a mom who was wrapped up in making his life perfect. Yeah, he was what some might call a textbook narcissist, with my mom as his flying monkey, Wizard of Oz reference. Anyway, school was a difficult time for me, and I had a lot of anxiety and a hard time focusing. I attended all my classes, and was always doing very well on my assignments, but had trouble completing them. My guidance counselor was the same all through high school, and every year would start with a meeting with her, and I would explain I needed more help, because I was struggling to focus. She brushed me off every time, stating that I obviously wasn't trying hard enough because I had no excuse, since my stepdad, adopted dad, was, wait for it, a social worker for the school board and personal friend of hers. Yeah, it was awful. At the end of high school we had our obligatory meeting about what colleges or universities or trade schools to apply to. I told her I was interested in psychology and would like to be a counselor or to teach psychology. This woman scoffed. Literally scoffed at me. She said, and I quote, "Please do not apply to university. It would be a huge disappointment for you. You are not university material, and you may be better with a community college or even certificate in administration." Now let me say there is nothing wrong with going to community college or getting a certificate in something. Nothing at all. But this woman's words would haunt me my whole life. I wanted to pursue something I was very interested in, and she essentially told me I wasn't smart enough or capable enough to do it. Fast forward to my late 20s. I worked at a variety of small jobs here and there and became very depressed. I finally decided one day that F it, I'm applying for university. Well, I got in and I graduated with honors. So I went to teacher's college for another bachelor degree. Again, graduated with honors. And about 5 years ago, I finally finished my master's in behavioral psychology. 2 years ago my stepdad died, and who is at the visitation? My old guidance counselor. She came right over and started talking to me immediately like she knew me, like we're old friends. I cut her off and said, "I'm so sorry, you must be confusing me with someone else." She looked absolutely shocked and said, "I was your guidance counselor. For 4 years. And I just shook my head and gave the best blank look I could give, shrugged and said, "Sorry, I honestly don't remember you." When I left she looked a bit confused and disappointed. I think she had hoped for me to have all of these good memories of her, how helpful she was to me as a teen. But nope. I wanted her to feel that she was nothing to me. Had zero effect, even though she did affect me, I wasn't letting her know that. I felt pretty good about that. I just found out my girlfriend is a part of a cult with her rich elite family. Hey folks, I'm Mark and I've been with my girlfriend, Amy, for about 3 years now. I gotta share this because it's eating me up inside. So, I've been seeing Amy for about 3 years now. We first bumped into each other at some local event. She was passing out sandwiches and I was stuck with trash duty. Between jokes about soggy bread and trash bags, we pretty much hit it off instantly. Classic rock and a shared love for old TV shows got us talking, and before I knew it, we were a thing. But here's where it gets weird. In these past 3 years, while she's become buddies with my mates and even my grouchy cat, Mr. Whiskers, I've never once met her family. I mean, come on, we're in the same town and everything. At first, I thought maybe they're just super private or something. But years go by, and still nothing. Every time I'd bring it up, she'd dodge the topic or come up with some weird excuse. I've always found it odd. Now, let's fast forward to last Christmas. I was thinking, alright, this is my shot. I'll get to meet the family. I suggested we hang at her place, maybe have a quiet dinner. She said yes, and man, was I stoked. But when we rolled up to her parents' house, it wasn't just any regular house. It was massive, like, mansion big. Looked super old too. Gave me vibes of those big houses from old movies. And if that wasn't surprising enough, she told me her folks had some emergency and had bailed out of town. Just my luck, right? We went in and tried to have a normal evening, but the silence of that house was kinda eerie. Despite the circumstances, we made the most of the night, grabbed some supper down the street, watched a movie, and fell asleep in what seemed to be her childhood room. Later that night, she was asleep and I was trying to find the kitchen for some water, when I stumbled upon a faint sound. Like whispering. It was coming from a door down one of the hallways. So there I was, in the middle of this old, big house, and the only noise was this weird whispering. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tiptoed closer. The closer I got, the clearer the whispers became, but it was in some weird language I couldn't understand. My heart's racing by now, right? I noticed a soft light seeping out from under the door. Man, I thought of turning back, but then what kind of story would that be? I crouched down and peeked through the keyhole. Now, you won't believe what I saw. There was a group of people inside, all wearing these dark cloaks, seated in a circle, mumbling that weird chant. I couldn't see their faces. The room was lit with candles, and in the middle of them was some kind of ornate-looking bowl. I freaked the F out. Like, straight up horror movie stuff right there. I backed away as quietly as I could and pretty much sprinted back to bed. I tried to act cool, not wake Amy, and acted like nothing happened. Morning came, and I had to ask. "So, Amy," I said, "what's up with the room down the hall? The one with the chanting?" She looked at me kinda funny and then laughed it off, saying it was probably just some old junk and that the house makes weird noises all the time. But here's the thing, houses don't chant. I tried to play it cool for the rest of our stay. But deep down, I was rattled. The mystery of her family, this big old mansion, and now a cloak-wearing chanting group? It felt like I'd walked straight into an episode of The Twilight Zone. It honestly didn't even feel like real life. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't shake off that eerie feeling. Every time I looked at Amy, a million questions raced through my mind. I tried to talk about it with some buddies over beers, but no one had any solid advice. Maybe it's a family tradition or some weird club? One friend guessed. Or maybe you just had too much to drink? Laughed another. Helpful, right? But here's where it gets crazier. I was over at Amy's apartment one evening, and she went out to grab some food. I decided to snoop around a bit. Hey, don't judge me, curiosity got the best of me. I needed answers. Anyway, I stumbled upon a drawer in her room. And what did I find? One of those dark cloaks, exactly like I'd seen at the mansion. Right there, my heart sank in my stomach. I felt nauseous. It wasn't just some random group at the house, Amy was part of it. The rest of that evening felt like I was in a fog. When she returned with the food, we tried to settle into a normal evening vibe. She grabbed some Chinese takeout, my favorite orange chicken and her go-to shrimp fried rice. But every bite I took tasted bland, even the TV show we had playing in the background, some comedy rerun we've watched a million times before, just sounded like mindless noise. My thoughts were consumed by that cloak, the room, and the strange whispers. At one point, she tried making small talk, probably sensing my distraction. But every attempt to engage in casual conversation felt strained, superficial. Finally, after what felt like hours, I couldn't handle the weight of my curiosity and concern. I turned off the TV, took a moment to gather my thoughts and finally confronted her about the cloak in the drawer. Her reaction was instant. Her face was drained of color. For a moment, her eyes darted around, as if looking for an escape or an explanation. It was like she'd been caught in a lie she never expected to confront. Then she sighed, took a shaky breath and looked at me, eyes clouded with emotion. She then told me there was something she needed to get off her chest. She went on to explain that it's a family tradition, some old ritual they've been practicing for generations. She kept telling me that it was harmless and just a way to connect with their roots. And she'd kept it a secret because she didn't want me to think they were weird or get freaked out. But it all felt off, like she rehearsed what she'd say if she ever got caught. Man, it's so twisted. I mean, I genuinely love Amy. The laughs, the memories, the late night talks. But now? There's this shadow over everything. That cloak, it's like it's burned into my brain. Every time she smiles, every time she talks, behind all that I just see her wearing it, in that dimly lit room, surrounded by those chanting voices. It feels like there's this other side of her I never knew. And even though she acts like everything's normal, it's hard. I can't shake the feeling off. Like, is this just some quirky family thing or is there more to the story? It's driving me nuts, to be honest. What would you all do? Do I just go with it or trust my gut that there's more she's not saying? What do you guys think?
The relationship with minimal contact, however, now that she cuts me off first, I don't have to deal with that witch anymore.